Hey there, welcome to Spiritual Psychology. My name's Renee LaValle McKenna, and I bring my 30 plus years as a recovering addict and ex-crazy person turned therapist and shamanic healer to bring you snackable teachings on spirituality, psychology, and all things personal growth. And today I want to talk about radical change and radical freedom. And many of us crave change in our life, and in any place where there's suffering or discord, change is absolutely called for. In fact, I've come to believe that the main purpose of any kind of discomfort, pain, or suffering is to bring attention to some kind of a problem, and our work as conscious beings is to move toward a solution. And because from a meta perspective, everything is always changing, always in motion, the earth never stops turning, water and air never stop flowing, and on the atomic and subatomic level, everything is whirling around on some stage in a process of constant and perhaps infinite change. In fact, it's often resistance to change, fear of the unknown, and being made different that actually creates the resistance that is often at the root of our suffering as humans. And I use suffering in the widest way possible. Suffering is discord, dis-ease, including physical disease, anxiety and fear, depression, unresolved emotional issues, places where we feel stuck or frozen, hopeless, helpless, powerless. Those are all, for me, forms of suffering. Shame, guilt, loneliness. It's a long list of ways we can be fucked up as humans. And there's an even longer list of ways that we can align ourselves with the flow of the life force that has only our highest good in mind, participating in our own evolution and coming to places of more health, strength, vitality, creativity, and love. So there's what we want from life, and there's what life wants from us. And this co-creative conversation that we're in with the larger system and our own personal will is our soul's journey. And there's things we have control over and there's things we don't. But even if we do nothing, change is happening, both internally and externally. Simply as the days and time passes, we are aging. People, objects, and even circumstances are being born and dying or dissolving on a constant secular process. And so doing nothing or making no choice is a choice in itself. And there are these two main forces always happening on this plane of existence. One is growth and expansion, development and strengthening, and the other is dissolving, decay, decline, and dissolution. And I suppose they're opposing forces, but they're always working together in this seemingly endless process of becoming. And as a deep student of death, both practically and metaphorically, because the ending of anything could be seen as a death, our ideas about ending are actually a fallacy, because everything is in some state of continuation. In deep Buddhism, it could be said that there is no death. That death itself is an illusion. In Hinduism, there's the concept of Maya, that actually everything on the material plane is some form of illusion. It doesn't mean it's not real. We're certainly all having an experience here, but our understanding or conception of what is happening on the earth plane is very skewed for most of us. And this concept of awakening, again, what the Buddha points to, is this deeper truth of no birth and no death and no fear. That we are part of the life force, inseparable from it, even unto death. And having had many, many experiences of clients spontaneously discovering past lives, and a pretty regular, spontaneous connection with the spirits of ancestors, angels, and wise beings, spirit helpers in the transpersonal realm that seem to be always readily available for help, really brings tremendous question marks into our ideas about the finality of death. And going in the other direction, there's quite a few processes and practices that I use in spiritual psychology where we work with a person's birth and our ability to move forward and backward. At least that's how we conceptualize of it, through this idea of time is more of a mental construct than an absolute truth. So change is inevitable. How we align ourselves with it is optional. And how we participate with change, whether we trust the flow of it, hate it, or fear it, that has a lot to do with how we experience this unfolding life. And we certainly have the ability to create change in our own circumstances, but many times circumstances create change for us. And many times in a human life, the call to change is radical. And the word radical means going to the root origin or fundamental structure of something. Radical change is extreme, even drastic, and may mark a departure from our usual ideas, beliefs, practices, or ways of being. The metamorphosis from caterpillar to moth is a radical change. I have a lot of teenagers in my life. The movement from childhood to adolescence is extreme. I have a 17-year-old in my life who's grown 14 inches in the last 2 or 3 years. He used to stand on his toes to try to be as tall as me. We were measuring his height in a doorway with a pencil, and my shoulders about at his waist at this point, because I'm only 5'2". I had knee replacement surgery just about a year ago to profound success. I can walk now without pain. Miles I can walk. I'm lifting heavy at the gym, riding bikes all over the place, strengthening my lower body that was really in a process of decay and dissolution, tremendous weakness and dysfunction with a bone-on-bone knee joint because everything's connected. It caused problems in my other hip and problems in my ankles. And I tried just about every non-surgical intervention that you could have, many non-traditional ones, including energetic healings and acupuncture, creative visualizations, sound healing, all kinds of supplements, yoga. And I can't tell you how grateful I am that we live in a time and that I live in a place in the world where they can just give me a new knee. Radical transformation, radical change that has given me radical freedom. And there are times for subtle change, and there are times for change on the deepest, most fundamental level. And the more we surrender to these calls for radical change, or our experiences of them, the more profound, healing, and empowering they can be. I have a new friend, Misha. We're working together in a money group, and we share deeply what's happening in our life because everything's interconnected and money is not separate from our life experience. And she was married for 40 years to this lovely man whose body was failing. He was on dialysis, having all kinds of transfusions, and their whole life was focused on his physical health. She's in her late 70s. He was in his early 80s, and he decided he didn't want to do these treatments anymore. It wasn't the way that he wanted to live. Radical choice. And he died within a week. And Misha cared for him at home day and night. It was a week from hell, but also a week from heaven. Deep presence and service, assisting in the death of a loved one. Tremendous gift that I encourage you to participate in if you have the opportunity. And you will, because everyone will die. And at 78, she has had this quite shocking, transformational, awakening, enlivening experience on the other side of this tremendous loss. Because she's lost his Social Security and actively working to come to a place of financial health and maturity. She's been dedicated to living in the solution rather than the problem, to be in faith rather than fear. And she's decided to turn this beautiful old farmhouse that they have into a mini retreat center and host artists in residence. And all of this amazing serendipity is happening, communal and familial love and support, and her own inspiration. This unexpected surge of creative and even sexual energy, which are very intertied with each other. In the midst of this deep grieving process, this radical change in her life, her husband's death has created a new birth. in the form of what feels like a very exciting new business for her in this final phase of her life. In fact, I'm going to go to Pennsylvania and spend a week with her so she can practice hosting me on my own retreat, and I can help her with some business planning and web development so she can open the door to this new life flow that's coming into this space. And her husband's spirit is absolutely part of that. And his own continuation as a poet and artist, blessing and inspiring this radical transformation in Misha's life and in this beautiful property that they both loved. So change is always called for, always happening. Again, the earth is always turning, not just turning, but actually simultaneously shooting through space. The whole solar system is moving. The whole universe is moving. Just as the protons, neutrons, and electrons are spinning in every atom, and sometimes the change is subtle, and sometimes the changes called from us are subtle, and sometimes they're radical. So do I need to exercise my body, or do I need to get surgery, or both? Do I need to go to couples counseling, Al-Anon? Do I need to open my relationship, or leave it all together? Do I need to fix up or redecorate my house, rent it out to someone else, or sell it all together? I recently did a podcast on the 3 keys to personal power. We always have 3 choices to create positive, constructive change in our life, to bring healing. We can accept things as they are, we can ask for or create positive change, or we can remove ourselves. If you're a particularly controlling, assertive, or extroverted person, it could be radical change to stop trying to change things. If there's a lot of judgment or reaction to particular people or world circumstances, coming to a deeper trust or acceptance or alignment with what is can, in my experience, be quite radical. Think about my first marriage to someone with a lot of mental health and addiction issues. Poor thing was actually a pathological liar and was unable to hold a job or stay clean and sober. And I was obsessed with, quote unquote, helping him. And every time I caught him in a lie or he did something ridiculous, which was pretty frequent, I would be devastated. I had this wonderful counselor at the time, and she said, if an apple tree produces an apple, do we have a heart attack? Or is this an expected outcome? And so if someone is an addict and a habitual liar, should we be shocked every time they tell a lie? And the apple tree bearing apples is not personal to me, nor is another person's dysfunction. And so when I was able to come to radical acceptance of Paul's quite extreme dysfunction, I no longer felt victimized by it. I didn't cause it, can't cure it. And over time, I became able to turn that energy that I was using trying to change others, particularly him, toward changing myself. We didn't stay married very long, and the poor thing is dead now. But moving through the radical change of deep acceptance, ultimately divorce and bankruptcy, was a tremendously healing and transformative process. It was a catalyst for me moving from Boston to California, and ultimately going to graduate school for transpersonal psychology. I don't know if I've ever told the story of how I found out about Paul Anderson's death. That was my first husband. I was on social media messaging with an old mutual friend who asked about him, and it had been almost 14 years since we had last spoken. So I did a quick Google search, and his obituary came up, and he had died over a year before, at age 48. Not a shock because of the way that he lived, but I reached out to his sister, my ex-sister-in-law, messaged her on social media, and she got back to me the next day and she said, "You won't believe what I'm doing this weekend." I hadn't talked to her in 14 years either. She said, "I'm spreading Paul's ashes. I've had them for almost 18 months, and this is the weekend we decided to do it. And I can't believe that you've reached out to me right now." It felt quite prophetic. It actually felt like a little amend from Paul. He was actually quite a loving and charming person in the midst of all of his insanity. And before she had reached out to me, she was looking at my social media pages and found out that I do a particular kind of art I call sacred ash painting, where I make paintings of the cremation ashes of those that have passed in a ritual and very intentional way. And she said, would you be willing to make sacred ash paintings for me and the family with Paul's ashes? And it felt like this profound opportunity for healing and closure. And so my ex-sister-in-law mailed me an envelope of Paul's ashes, and I made 3 paintings. Had the opportunity for another level of communing and forgiving and making peace with that really tumultuous and transformative relationship. And my relationship with that relationship continues to inform my life and is actively useful in my work with others navigating their own relational drama. So I encourage you to consider how you align with the unfolding change that is a part of your life. How do you resist it? How do you flow with it? And are you open to the subtle and or radical changes that may be called for at any given time? Thank you so much for listening. I'm in a period of radical transformation myself, living in California for the summer, the second of my 2 children going off to college, entering this new phase of my own life. I've been talking about starting a community on Patreon, but I've decided to take a little pause and do some retreat work this summer in preparation for this radical change into the 3rd phase of my own life. And so I am slowly dropping content on Patreon, but I don't expect that community to really kick into gear until the fall. And I'll keep you posted on that. Planning lots of groups and workshops, but just doesn't feel time yet to do that midsummer, following my own intuitive sense of what the universe wants from me. So I'm making art, spending time with family and friends, and doing some nice travel. But I am still seeing clients, so if you'd like some help and guidance in your own unfolding process, find out if a block of spiritual psychology work might benefit you in your life, shoot me an email, info@reneemckenna.com. Thanks as always to my generous supporters of this podcast. Blessings on your path until we meet again. This is Renee LaValle McKenna for Spiritual Psychology.